For the record, our executive session has ended. It was 9:07 p.m. Is there a motion? Second. A motion was made and seconded to return to Seeing none, all those in favor, by roll call. Mr. Tanis, Mr. Myers, and I will move into open session. We have one more item left, this is item 3B. I could just take it. Yeah, I know. Hey, people, take it outside. Item 3D is review, discuss, act, and vote motions for special town meetings on November 1st. Now I know why I couldn't find mine, because I didn't have it. Okay, some of these look a little redundant from our last meeting that we did talk about these and I believe them. We changed some of the wording, so I'll go back to. Are you listening? Yeah. Okay, so we'll have to amend those motions from our last meeting. What we did on the first one was I did, don't take it outdoors. Okay, the first one was a motion to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer real funds the amount of $12,000 to additionally fund account 0104300705295 as my disposal for the purpose of holding the household hazardous waste. This has changed because we added to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate. That wording was not in there before. So we're going to amend the motion from when? Our last meeting.
Yes, okay.
Do we have the date?
Of our last meeting?
Yes. Is this the 9th?
No.
Is that?
Give me a second.
19th?
Yeah,
Are the minutes done?
I think they are.
The
They
26th.
are, but they didn't go to you guys yet, sorry.
26th.
that sounds good.
Karen's smiling.
Okay, we can correct that. Okay, is there a motion to amend the motion?
August 12th.
No, we had a special meeting.
Yeah, after just to do these.
You wanna see the
26th.
26th, yeah, that's what I thought.
When was it?
August 26th.
Thursday, August 26th.
Okay. To amend the motion of August 26th to read what I just read for this motion. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and transfer funds. $12,000 for additional fund. Account number 0104300705295 as my disposal for the purpose of hosting a household hazardous waste. Second. Okay, motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. The next one is a motion regarding the hours and wages for the health agent. If you recall at the last meeting, I mentioned there was an offer on the table of 35 hours with no increase in salary. That has since changed. We did meet, myself, Mr. Kelly, with Selectman Chairman Ken Pacheco, and Town Administrator, Mr. Mullen. And the offer at that time, that was, I'm gonna say agreed to, or temporarily agreed to, was $38.86 and 35 hours. Now, that was an agreement just made between the four of us without board approval of this board or the remaining members of the Board of Selectmen. So, I put forth with a little bit of discussion with everyone, an article that addresses the dollar amount to be $42 an hour with 35 hours. And to fund that, it would be a cost of $14,934.36. So this board, this evening, has to make a decision if we're going to go with the low amount, the higher amount, or somewhere in the middle. So I'll leave it up to open discussion for the two board members for now, and I'll give my input.
I can start if you don't mind.
Excuse me?
If you don't mind, I'll start.
So then, so first, did everybody get the wage
Yeah, I think we looked at
study
it.
from Rockland? Okay.
It just, okay, I edited it down to only those in Bristol County of less than 20,000 populations. I don't know if that is gonna be helpful to anybody or not, but.
So, right now, this is where my position is. I believe in February, March, April, maybe even May of this year, we went before the selectmen a couple of times, finance committee, and we had asked for, and we proposed a budget that was knocked down, and we asked for it again. We asked for, I believe it was $38.13 at 35 hours, and it came out to whatever it was. So this number is definitely in line with what we originally asked for.
That was 3886.
Was it 38.86?
I feel that we, this is my opinion, I feel that we can do better perhaps with the Board of Selectmen at their meeting. We would first have to decide where this board wants to go. So I'm in favor of going forward with this dollar amount, at least to the Board of Selectmen.
Well, if I could finish.
Sure.
So if knowing that a meeting took place and you sat down with them and they actually, so the way I look at it is, we placed a proposed budget and they just said, oh no, you gotta go back to 2%. And then later on they said, oh, possibly in the fall, you can get that money, which we're in the fall now. But it was always that number. So now, in the fall, we're in the fall now, and they've agreed to back to this number, and we're gonna increase the number? And for me, it's like changing the game when what you asked for, you just got. That's the way I look at it.
That wasn't, although we agreed to it there, that was not a final negotiation or discussion with this board, nor the Board of Selectmen. I still think that even here, it's 41, which is why I said, I think we should just try for a little bit more, because I think the position is underpaid, and the duties and responsibilities are more than what's being asked of a regular health agent, so.
I'll say, I don't have it right in front of me. They just did a wage classification case study, training, and that data just came available Tuesday night. Their survey was disappointing to me as far as the responses they got from towns, but nonetheless, but health agents, average hours was about 35 a week, and the average hourly rate was $40.74, if I remember right, it was $40 and change. So, and looking at this and the towns that are on that, there really aren't that many that are the same, so. I think between 39 and 41 an hour is somewhere in the median range. So I'd probably put about 40 at 35.
Yeah, another thing that we had discussed, if the low amount goes to town meeting, 3886, it could get dumped down to even who knows what. So I've had the feeling we have, if we can get this board to approve an amount somewhere between 39 and 41, until such time we meet with the board of selectmen, to see how that goes, and we'll make a decision at that time. Because just because one member of the board of selectmen has talked to us and we reached 3886 doesn't mean the board, the remaining two members will not go higher.
Yeah, but on camera, they had said, you want this number, we can't do it at this time, even finance committee said, but you come to us in the fall and we'll revisit that number. I just look at it where we all did the pitch. And when it comes to that time to say, hey, honor your part of your bargain, and you talk to us, they're gonna say, okay, oh, wait a minute, you want more? Not that he wants more, but it changes the narrative every single time. It seems like it's constantly, the number's constantly moving. If we lock them into something, then we lock them into it. And then you say, and we always had it in as a caveat, we always said, and when we change it to a department head, we demonstrate the duties. And that's what we had said in our February meeting. That's when we say, this is what a department head makes. I just feel like they're gonna say, this is what they're gonna say, no. And then we're back in saying, do we go back and say, no, all right, we'll take the 3886.
Matt, I'll get to it.
This is where I've been pushing to get either one, a contract between town and the board of selectmen, because that clears up all these issues, or two, there should be a wage and personnel bylaw or something along those lines for the town, for any and all employees that don't fall under the union or contract. And quite frankly, the only three people that should have a contract is the town administrator, the police chief, and the fire chief. Everybody else should be in the union or wage and personnel. That wage and personnel bylaw literally is a union contract spelled out, including grades and steps for the different positions, without actually being in the union. That's what it should be. And if that's beyond our scope here with the Board of Health, and that'd be up to the Board of Selectmen. But that's what really needs to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
And that clears up all these issues and this back and forth with the finance committee and the board of selectmen. Unfortunately, that's not gonna happen tonight, it's not gonna happen this week, and it probably won't happen this year. But, I mean, at least for the time being, I wish the selectmen would come up with some kind of contract with Todd to put this, the rest all this back and forth. And I agree, Kevin, that, I mean, this is ludicrous, every single year, it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah, just last meeting, what was the number? 9,028, right?
No, the 9,000 was to go from 28 to 35.
Yeah.
That's
So
the same
I actually, like, I don't even know the number anymore. I had to look back at the email.
If you went with the 35 hours at 3886, it's $11,680.80.
But the original number that we were talking about was just 7 additional hours at my current pay, which was $9,000. That was the first number, then the second one was the 3886, but this for 7 extra hours. And now the number that Tom's floating is like 42 with 7 extra hours, so.
Again, I think it just changes, and the idea was, I'm not trying to hold you back, I think you do an excellent job. But we said February, March, April, and May. We determined that we need 35 hours, 7 extra hours, and we would do it for, I think it comes up to 71,000, right? With your,
About that, yeah.
with your $800, with your PE. Which is still good, but knowing that we still wanna change it to a department head, maybe add, I know we can't talk about, add different roles to your position or duties. Get a contract, things change from there. But I think to go back to them and say, maybe you said 38, 86, we said 4, or actually it's 41 now. I think they're gonna take the breaks, I really do. And I don't have I swear, I don't have the patience anymore to go in front of the finance committee, I don't. And go back in front of the select and do my song and dance, tap dance in front of them, say the same things. Oh, these duties, they know duties, COVID, this and that. And for them to say, maybe in the spring now. It's constantly kicking it down the road. So if we can hold them to what they said originally, and go back and say, this is what you said. Are you gonna do it? I don't know, that's just me.
Nancy,
Well, and I agree with you, it's a logical argument, but Tom's argument is logical too, so I'm torn.
I get both sides. I just, I see you doing way more for the town than what a health agent would do because you're an engineer. As a taxpayer, that's fabulous. I'm getting a lot for literally nothing. For $800, I'm getting an engineer for this town, which is awesome, right? However, that's completely inappropriate. So if the town, and the town should have an engineer, I know this, Tom and I at least have had discussions, and with Jim, and there have been grants, huge grants that have been lost because we don't have an engineer to get a stamp and designs, things like that, which Todd can do. That's a discussion that needs to happen, again, with the selectmen. If you had a contract, it'd be great, because then you could build in a legitimate stipend that values your PE and your PE work that you do for the town outside of the health department at an appropriate amount. And I think if at least right now, I mean, I have no problem at this point going to the finance committee and being like, look at all the extra engineering work that Todd is doing between conservation, stormwater, everything else that's outside of the scope of health agent. Either fix this and fix his pay, or get him a contract and get a stipend that includes the engineer.
Yeah.
So get you a little more, because at this point you're doing more engineering, and that's not what we hired you for. So get you a pay that's at least to a median of other health agents that aren't PEs for the time being, and then in the spring, let's get a contract, let's get the selectmen working on a wage of personnel and get you a stipend that is actually appropriate for your PE, not $800.
If you recall, the day I was hired, when you guys interviewed me, Tom's words were, you might have some stormwater stuff coming your way.
I was stoked to get a PE to apply to a health agent job. I mean, I'm an RS and I'm like, where's gold compared to, but then the PE, that's like way up here. I mean, especially in a town that's substantial septic and stormwater and wells, and I mean, that's huge.
we were very fortunate that you came to us and applied, and we hired you. Nancy, I know you.
When I was on the board and we were
I know you're dying to
discussing
say something.
budgets.
So go ahead.
I have information I don't think you guys are aware of, and you need to know this in order to make a decision based on fact. When I was on the Board of Selectmen, and I'm gonna put on my FinCom hat, and I'm gonna put on my Stormwater Chairman hat, I got all these hats, all right? When I was on the Board of Selectmen, we discussed this. I wanted to go for the higher number, somewhere around what that article is now. But the discussion took place, and it was, accept this now, we'll get this hopefully passed at town meeting, and we're gonna resolve this in the fall. Hey, guys, we're here in the fall, we're approaching the town meeting, and the numbers I'm seeing are not what I supported last year when I was, last spring, when we were discussing budget. My personal opinion is, you have got to look at the individual. what are the qualifications? Well, the stormwater agent and the health agent, they do this and this. Then you really look at what they're doing. We heard discussions tonight about people doing things outside of what the union contract said and all that. There is no doubt in my mind, this town would not have prevailed with the Dora Estates problem if he wasn't here. As a matter of fact, he was up to his eyeballs with a lot of other stuff, but because the Stormwater Committee was pursuing that issue, including protecting our drinking water supply, our water rights to the Segregated River and everything else, he's the only person employed in this town that could look at the plans and put together literally pounds of documentation to share with the Concom in time, to give it to the engineer and the attorney and everybody involved with this. There was so much documentation that it got continued from June to July. And when we got there in July, there was more information. It got continued to August. There was no question at all when the final plan came in August, because the meeting was held right here. What had happened was the engineer who drew the original plans, the company he worked for got sold or something. So he went to his new employer and said, hey, can I finish working on that? What he came in with was a completely different plan. And what he was told, if you'd have brought that plan in the very first meeting, we wouldn't have been at the Concom meeting. I will also tell you, this is not just me talking, because I went to the town of Somerset, because they also have water rights. I got permission to do it. I met with the superintendent of the water and sewer department in Somerset, who's also a PE. He reviewed everything, and from day one, he was supporting what we were doing based on what Mr. Pilling had done. There was no question in my mind we were on solid ground. I realize that's only one incident. That was monumental. Now, set that one aside and look at the other work that's done, and you're absolutely right. If we were to hire a PE for this town, we'd be talking a lot more money than this. Now, the facts that you don't know. When a conservation agent was hired, salary was set. Boom, $40 an hour. Went right through. Since then, we have hired a town accountant, and we have hired a soon-to-be, she's going to be appointed, but the name's been announced, an experienced assessor. One of those jobs, the salary is $83,000, and one of them is $80,000. I don't take anything away from those individuals. The assessor that's coming in is experienced. She worked in this town before. She will have the full-time assessor's job, not the elected job, the appointed job. She's the one that's going to do all the calculations and stuff. The individual that is our town accountant is a CPA. That requires a large salary. She doesn't have municipal experience, so she is being trained. But in order to get qualified people to do these jobs, that's the kind of money we're talking about. I take nothing away from them and their professional credentials. But on a day-to-day basis, and pretty much it has been that way, working with issues with Mr. Pilling, with the solar farms that we have, he's the only one that can really look at it and go into it. Yes, highway superintendent can tell me about roads and stuff, and the building commissioner, but they all work together cohesively. So for my stormwater position, we can't afford not to have somebody with his qualifications, even if the job title isn't that. And when you talk about the value of a PE, probably good he isn't in the union, because they'd be saying he can't do that, right? But the fact of the matter is, there are so many things that a PE, even if he's not titled a PE, but has the credentials, you deploy personnel where they are most effective. And the fact that he's not a union personnel, you can just about handle everything. Whatever we need, if he's qualified, you can ask him to do it. He was up to his eyeballs with solar farms and still COVID. And when the Dora thing was coming down to the final meeting, I said to him, I don't care what you're doing, you've got to drop it. You're the only person that can do this. This is our last shot. You've got to go back to Taunton with this final thing. He got information to the other engineer. That engineer called back and asked for a meeting. And it was Mr. Pilling and Mr. Aguirre and I that sat in this room. And again, I have to rely on him and Mr. Aguirre. They reviewed the plans, and that's when it was said, if you'd have brought this in the first time, we wouldn't have had to go to the city of Taunton the first time. That was how different that was. But all of that changed, and quite frankly, a brand new plan, the third shot, came about because of him. And when I say to you, when you look at employees in this town, professional employees, who, in the two cases I mentioned, both of those employees are gonna have contracts. I'm reviewing one right here now, because I've gotta give it to the town administrator. The fact that he doesn't have a contract should not affect the rate of pay. All employees should be treated fairly. And my point is, something has got to be done to bring him somewhere in line with other professional employees. And furthermore, the discussion last spring and budget before things got changed, accept this for the June town meeting, we'll resolve it in the fall. What I initially heard was, wait a minute, what happened to the agreement? Well, we don't think we can sell it. My point is, you go to the Board of Selectmen, you go to town meeting with a higher number. Because there's a good chance it could get reduced. If you go in with a fixed number, we're getting this, and they don't vote it, you got it. I can also tell you, a number of years ago, and I don't know if both of you were living in town at the time, Board of Selectmen realized that the highway superintendent's job was grossly underpaid. And so the Board of Selectmen voted an increase over and above the 2%. And we told the highway superintendent that, and he said, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, I don't have a contract. We said to him, it's gonna happen. We got to town meeting, and I said to him, Tom, I'm bringing this up. If you don't wanna be in the meeting hall, but I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna fight for this, and I did. And the main concern was from questions, how come you're doing this? Because the Board of Selectmen recognized this individual, this job. The job to begin with is grossly underpaid, and quite frankly, the performance of this individual is not being recognized at the level it should be. It passed, and I don't think there was opposition. Now, there were questions, but I'm the one that got up and made the proposal. I really think that what those salaries that I told you about, those are real, guys. Those are real. And what you're talking about is not unreasonable in that number. I did speak to the town administrator, and I said, they're gonna come in with that higher number, but there's gonna be a note in parentheses. It's still gotta be discussed. I hope it goes to town meeting with the number that's there, because I'm willing to get up and support it. I don't think you're backpedaling by saying, oh, this was agreed to or this was agreed to. I agreed to something else last spring when we were talking budget. It didn't happen, because I was told, we're all set for the annual, we're going to the annual, we want a balanced budget. As a finance committee person, I understand that, because in the fall is when you straighten everything out, you set your budget, the tax rate gets set. So, I really think, I strongly believe, especially since of the new positions and what they're being funded at, this is a reasonable number. And if that number appears on the warrant, I am certainly gonna stand up and support it, because I think it's that important. And yes, I agree with you, his job description needs to be revised. No question about it. But in the meantime, as the stormwater person, if I need him for more than 3 hours a week, I'm gonna say to him, I don't care what you're working on. If another situation comes up, it came up out of the blue that we had to deal with, especially with another municipality, you know, why would I have been able to get an engineer to do what was done in this time frame? I wouldn't have gotten one.
No.
And we would have been, we, the town of Dayton, and quite frankly, the town of Somerset, who was a party of interest, we'd have been trampled. But you can ask the superintendent, Mr. Sylvia, his opinion of what took place and how in effect the town of Dayton represented both the town of Dayton, the Dayton Water District, and the town of Somerset, and how that was resolved. You know, in a manner that we felt was, we're happy with what's happening. So that's my pitch.
Todd?
It's just very, very quickly, so Kevin, you're right, in January, the number we presented, since January, two things have happened. Number one is I have crossed that line of being an engineer as opposed to just a stormwater agent. We've also hired a conservation agent who I've been assisting, because obviously what was happening before was just the members of the commission, but now we have an agent that is starting to assist her in her job, so I just want to throw that out.
I will say,
I'll just add one other thing about that problem up on the Segregated River. We had to clearly state at the Concom meeting in Taunton, what is being presented. These are suggestions, these are whatever, because our concern was, and we were cautioned about this legally, they could say, follow the plans that came in from Dayton, and if something went wrong, we'd be on the hook. We made it clear. This is what we feel should be done, and we would like it reviewed. And again, this position was backed up by the PE, who was the superintendent in Somerset. He cautioned us, you've got to be careful, because you don't want them to say, we're gonna do exactly what Dayton said. So we were also protecting the town legally.
I see a bunch of numbers going on there, what's going on?
No, I was just doing my numbers, about the figures, trying to figure out what the difference was. I looked at from what I came out to, what we originally proposed to what you have written down is $1,900 less. And I believe, I'll just check your numbers on this. If you're proposing the 14,000,
That's the fund of the rest of the year at 42.
oh, from the rest of the year, okay. Well, and Nancy, if I could just mention one thing. At the time, you were one of the selectmen, and you were the voice for the increase in hours. So was I, so the rest of the board. And it was an emphatic no. Then we went to finance committee, it was a no. We went back to the, and you tried again. Like I said, I'm looking at it as, they're saying no, and even if they didn't approve it, or they did not recommend, it's not an easy sell, but at least if you say, I don't want to say the same thing over and over, but if you had said, this is what they originally agreed to, and here we are, for that number that we identified as that number, it's much easier.
By the time I got the final answer to what had happened, I still wasn't happy, but it wasn't a solid no. It was, take this now, and in the fall, which is where we are now, we're gonna take care of this. So I said, okay, because that is a method that the finance committee uses time immemorial to come in under the levy limit annually, okay? It was when, and not only that, I didn't have the salary figures, I just read to you. Those are true numbers, okay? But I put this all together, and I look at this and say, there is a definite unfairness here. What is being proposed, it doesn't fit, it's like,
But what they're looking at, and that's what I got from them, is the bottom, we asked me what the numbers are, for the annual increase. What they're looking at is, this department line item will go up $16,795 versus $17,595. That's all they're looking at, they're saying, why are you increasing your budget by $16,000, almost $17,000? And then you sell it to the townspeople, Board of Health is increasing their budget by almost $17,000, why?
because there was an indication to go in under the levy limit in June that this was sort of a partial, I'll call it settlement, but there was, in my opinion, a definite promise in the fall we're gonna look at. I don't think it was initially talked about rises to the level of what was, in my opinion, being put forth. I just don't believe it. What do you think happened when we went to town meeting? What happened when I described what happened with the highway superintendent? I said, just put the number on the warrant. If it doesn't pass, we know what his salary's gonna be. If this number passes, this is exactly what the board voted unanimously because they recognize there's an inequity. And what I'm saying to you right now is, when I see the salaries that are being paid for these two new hires, I don't question the positions, the qualifications, or anything else. But I also know, I don't care what you call him, he's a PE, and he's been used as a PE in every possible instant. And when we walk out of the door tonight with all the solar farms and everything else we got going, he's still gonna be a PE, although he doesn't have the title.
So
So that's what I'm saying.
My question is, so on the town floor, if we said 73,000, and they said like this, townspeople, they can amend it on the floor and say like this, no, we think it should be whatever it is, 70,000 at $35, they can make that, right?
Yeah, they can reduce, you can't increase.
Is he gonna agree to that? No, he's not gonna agree to that.
That's not the point.
It is the point, because if they said like this, no for everything, he goes back to 28 hours, we didn't solve a darn thing, because we addressed that we needed more hours, we agreed to a salary originally, but what about they say, we'll give you 77, and he says, I guess, I don't know that.
The fact of the matter is, sooner or later, guys, you have to take a stand.
We've been in front of them constantly.
So,
I'm saying, they said to you, accept this for the June town meeting. We're gonna talk about it in the fall. We're now talking about it in the fall. And if they're saying, no, wait a minute, this wasn't the discussion back before the June annual town
They
meeting.
agreed to what we wanted so far.
so,
Well,
if I can. So Nancy, one, I haven't seen you in months and months, so really,
Since the fire.
yes, yeah. So from the bottom of my heart, for everything you've done for Todd and for the Board of Health and Stormwater, I can never thank you enough,
Absolutely.
truly. I'm at a loss for words. So that's one, just a personal thank you. Two, will you be at fall town meeting?
Unless I drop dead in the meantime.
So, I can get up and talk and who the hell is this guy and no one's gonna listen to me, whatever. I feel if you're willing to
I'm
help
going to make the
support us,
motion.
you're a incredibly well-respected person, you've been on the board of selectmen for years and years. I mean, if you get up and say, this is what we need, this is why we need it, I would be like, absolutely. So if you're willing to help support 42 an hour,
That's why I
and get up and
stayed
say
here
it.
tonight, because I wasn't sure what was gonna come up. And when there was a meeting with, Mr. Pius and whatever, the others that were there,
Mike Walker,
Mr.
Chico.
Mike, Mr. Chief. And then, as I said, since I had the other I know what the other contract was. But as an assessor, we just submitted the name of the person, and the Board of Selectmen will make the appointment. We recommended, now I know what this job's gonna pay. And I'm looking at that saying, the last two hires, he's not looking for that kind of money, and we're not proposing that kind of money. But you know what? Fair is fair. And that was the whole point. The Finance Committee did not support our position relative to the highway superintendent. And he was uncomfortable, and he kept saying to me, don't do it. And I said to him that night, Tom, I'm gonna do it. I don't wanna embarrass you, but I'm gonna get up and fight for it. We voted unanimously, we all recognize what the situation is. And I don't think, given what has occurred, not only Dora Estates, situations we're dealing with solar farms, okay? I don't think there's a doubt in the mind of members of the Board of Selectmen, the town administrator, or anybody else about the value of what he has done and the support he has provided. And quite frankly, if they vote to put that number on the warrant, they don't have to get up and defend it. I'll make the motion, I'll get up and defend it, because I feel that strongly about it, because I think we have a good case, without even all the details. The last two employees, professional employees, both of which who have contracts, I told you what the salary is. He's nowhere near that, and he's not gonna be at that number, so to speak, even if this number passes. It's not only all of the whole ball of wax, the work, it's an issue of fairness. And yes, something's gotta be done about professional employees that are not union and have no contracts, gotta be done.
Bill, I mean, the fact is, there's no health agents, nobody wants the jobs, and there's definitely will never replace Todd with another need. I will tell you, it's one of these towns on the sheet, I was offered a job as their health agent, and the original pay they offered, I said, there's no way. 24 hours later, they called back and increased that pay $12,000 a year, and said, you can walk in and you're turnkey, and you gotta do RS. And I still declined the job because they were still that far off. And that's paid substantially more than what Todd would get with this increase. And he's a PE,
And the good thing is, we
and he
can
does way more.
we can take advantage of him as a PE every time we need him. And when he's not working on another solar farm, or we don't have another river disaster, you got your health agent, you got somebody that's qualified to do all those things. To me, as I said, the most important thing about personnel management is deploying the people that have the best talents where you need them. Yes, hopefully it fits a job description, but they shouldn't be held back and not compensated fairly, although the job description doesn't say that.
Kevin, I was skeptical as you were last week, some time ago. And after some discussion, I agree with Mrs. Goulart. And it was her idea to put and if you look at your motion, it says, right after dollar amount, it says TBD. The final amount to be determined by future discussion with the Board of Health and the Board of Selectmen. Now, I also felt the same way, in my whole adult career as a union official, I have never, withdrawn from an agreement. But I had the sole, responsibility of saying yes and no as we went along. This is a little bit different because if we get full board approval here and at least part of the Board of Selectmen approval, if not all three, I don't believe one of them will bite on this, but only one made that decision, not the three of them.
So the average is 41, would you comfortable? And I'm trying to do this, because we talk about it all the time, we talk about it all the time, when we get in, you know. So, is, the average is 41, would you be comfortable with 40?
The health agent has way more responsibilities than a conservation agent.
I'm willing to go
Who's talking about, we're talking about health agents.
We're here
Like, way
tonight,
more duties, responsibilities.
we're here tonight with a number. I don't wanna hear anything less
I'm willing
All
to
I
take this to the
want
Board of
is-
Selectmen.
for a majority of your board or unanimously, let's agree to send this number to the Board of Selectmen. And when it goes to the Board of Selectmen, I hope to be there and say, look, I'm only asking that you put it on the warrant and let the people decide. Put it on the warrant doesn't mean you're gonna support it. I mean, we've had warrant articles that were, quite frankly, voted favorably at a Board of Selectmen's meeting and had a selectman stand up at town meeting and make the statement, well, when I vote as a selectman, I vote one way, but when I come to town meeting, I vote as a resident. Haven't figured that one out yet.
What I'm trying to get is, what does that number come out to?
Annually,
Yeah,
76,
26,000.
plus my
so
1,900.
what you're giving me is a missing number. that's what I'm trying to do this math here.
Well, that's the remainder of the year.
The remainder of the year, the average, so you're,
Right, so-
you're well above average.
Oh, he's below.
The average is 73,000. It's $3,000 over average?
Oh, well, that's because the 53,000 brings it way down, which is mine right now.
Just maybe, I just wanna know what I'm looking at.
Yeah, so it would go to 76,000 plus my 1,900 in stipends and bring it to 78,000, but the stipends aren't included in these numbers, this is just it.
Correct.
So it would go to 76,000, which yes, it would be higher than Freetown, Acushnet, Rehoboth, and Swansea. So I hear what you're saying, and see, to answer your question, would I accept a lower number lower than 42? The answer is possibly, but if we go in with that lower number, are we gonna get knocked down? So do you go in at 42 and end up somewhere in between when we go meet with the selectmen or FinCom, and that's the number that gets presented at town meeting? I think I'm having a hard time with this game too, for the same reasons. I don't wanna get shut down
I'm not trying to do
again,
that.
I wanna do it with something
I'm
reasonable.
trying to.
Kevin, if you take that, his right now out of that, it comes out to about 76.5.
That's what I was trying to do, math.
My
So it
feeling
brings him in
is,
line with the average.
my feeling is, put it before the voters. If the voters say no and reduce it, I will feel I did the best I could to try to bring equity to these positions. If I can't even get a board to recognize there is a huge inequity amongst professional, non-union employee rates, that this is a lost cause. Put it on the warrant. Again, the people are gonna decide. And if somebody says, well, I'll vote to put it on the warrant, but I'm not gonna support it at town meeting, not the first time it's happened for me. But by the same token, if you don't try, you'll never have an opportunity to explain to people why you're asking the people to do this.
I'm getting ready to move on here, and I'm gonna entertain a motion that we move forward with this at the rate of $42 an hour, at 35 hours. Move it to at least to the board of selectmen.
So to be determined, still.
Yeah. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? I'll step down a second motion. Motion made and seconded, all in favor? Aye. No, you abstaining, or? I'm a no. You're a no, okay. That's 2 out of 3. So this moves forward to the next step, at that rate. Oh, yeah, we'll see what happens there.
I fully expect it to be something less than that, but that's what they don't want.
Oh, yeah.
What they want and what they want to support, I'm just saying, put it on the warrant, please. You can get up at town meeting and say, no, we don't support this. We're trying to make that old lady happy so she'll get off our case. But the fact of the matter is, people are the last opportunity. And if you're told again, well, we'll do this for now and then come back next year, I'm gonna tell you something, when I was on the board of selectmen, annual town meeting, the police chief came in and wanted a cruiser. Money was so tight, Tom may have been on the board, I'm not sure. And you, Tom. I said to the chief, it's not going on the warrant, we don't have any money, but come back in the fall. My FinCom had, I said, come back in the fall, you know how it is, okay. Came back in the fall. I said to him, it's not going on the warrant, we still don't have any money. He wasn't happy. By December of that year, I found out there was money being held at the regional school district that should have been returned to the town of Dayton. And I found out the town of Rehoboth got their share in July. It's now December. So we met with the school committee, and I walked in with my 2 cohorts, and it came up, and the only person I knew that was gonna vote for me had said to me, how much money are you looking for? I said, I want $80,000 of that money that's left. That's still gonna leave the school district this money for these projects they want. And he said to the superintendent, how much money are we talking about? She says, well, if we do the things that we wanna do this, she says she won't fight, it's $79,063. I said, I'll take it. The vote was 1 no, and it was a Dayton person who didn't get reelected. Every other member of that school committee voted it, and one person said during the discussion, a Rehoboth person said, I don't even know why we're discussing this. When Rehoboth was given the money back, Dayton should have gotten theirs automatically, okay? I sure was happy to say to the police chief, we're gonna get your cruiser. And we had enough money to fill a long vacant spot for the rest of the year in the highway department, okay? And we still left money there for them to do this. But everyone says, oh, you gotta put this on the warrant, and I said, there's no way, it wasn't gonna pass. And if it got on there and the people voted it, we got a problem, because we're over 2.5. But this is the kind of stuff you have to think about when you're talking municipal finance. In the end, it took a little while. I think you get the cruiser by the time you ordered it, probably arrived, June. But the fact of the matter was, we had the money to do it. But we had to fight for it, And at the town meeting, when we got up and told the people, we got this money, this is gonna affect your tax rate, you need your permission to spend it, we got it. So,
It depends on, at those meetings, I remember with the assessor, she got her full, wasn't it? She got her full raise, but we got turned down for certain things. So it really depends on how they're feeling that day.
but if you don't even make the attempt,
No, there's an attempt, because what you're missing from my argument is, there is an increase.
absolutely.
I don't wanna make it sound like I'm not supporting any increase. There's an increase, which they said they would increase, and we agreed to, almost. We had said, not almost, we had said originally, this is what we want. At the time, they had said, no, 2%, and then we said, no, this is what we want, and they said, come back to us. And now, the number changed again, so I'm just saying. I think we're playing double jeopardy.
Right, and what I'm saying to you is, the discussion that took place, there were no votes taken. The member of the Board of Selectmen said, I'll support this, okay? I said from the beginning, this is not what we agreed to. I was going back to when I was on the FinCom, because I had been fighting for the June meeting. But even Mr. Swart said, because I know how it works, we gotta come in under the levy limit, we're gonna defer items to the fall. Okay, that's what we always do. So we're coming to the fall, and I'm saying, what's the number? And you get, I said, that's not the number. So, as I said, all I want is a shot. If it gets shot down, and they reduce it down to whatever number there is, I will have tried. We will have gone to the people and say, this is what we need, and quite frankly, folks, we've got the money to fund it. We will have the money to fund it.
So Kevin, just so you know, that if I do go to $42.35, it's 76.4, and the average on that salary survey you're looking at, when I get that raise, it'll be 76.3. So it puts me right in the middle, so, yeah. Not the Massachusetts each vote, I just wanted you to be aware that it doesn't put me way out, it puts me right in the middle.
I'm supportive, I think.
Yeah, I'm not,
Through the years,
I'd rather be honest.
less of the meetings, mentally, I cannot go in front of a.
Believe me, I feel the pain.
I cannot go through that. I said I was even in Zoom, I had no chance to talk, and I felt it was for nothing. I said my spiel, and it went to one ear to the other. I cannot do that. They said they were gonna do a number, do that number, and let's move forward with the department. That's where I am, I'm sorry.
If there had been a formal vote taken that said, we vote that for the special town meeting in the fall, we will place the warrant article for X on the warrant, and we will support it. There's no formal vote yet, that's why I'm saying to you, there's still time to discuss it. And all I'm looking for is a chance to discuss it at the town meeting. And putting it on the warrant doesn't mean they're gonna support it. But if you don't even get a shot,
We have to correct something here meeting up with
Don't
this.
change the number, please.
No. This motion, yeah.
You never took a recess for a break.
I know, that's why I think I wanted to.
Yes.
This motion was
Mike, come on.
to amend the motion of August 26th, which was set.
August,
It's August 26th, right?
It was to amend it, wasn't it? No?
was to amend, right, because you guys voted 9,000 and you're making it to be determined.
I thought the whole purpose was these were amendments.
He just wants to make sure the motion was made correctly, I think is what
I
it
haven't got my
is.
glasses on, so I
I
don't.
guess we need a motion to amend the amendment.
Wait,
I don't know how else, everybody's listening. And this is meant to, this motion that we made
Roz, read the first motion, please.
did not amend the August 26th.
I thought it did, so we're kicking around the date of the meeting, so I thought that was part of the motion. Remember when I said August 12th and it's like, no,
Yeah,
That was the first one.
that was,
I only have one.
Roz, what's the wording for the first one?
I have motion to amend the Thursday, August 26th vote to now read, C, motion to amend, and then to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and or transfer from available funds the amount of $12,000 to additionally fund account, blah, 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 for hazmat disposal for the purpose of
had
holding.
we already voted that one before?
He's saying that it didn't say motion to amend.
Yes.
Okay, so you gotta rescind the motion you made,
Okay.
and you gotta make a new motion that says, when Kevin comes back,
Yeah.
okay?
So it shouldn't say motion to amend?
No, it needs to.
Well, we're gonna rescind this one.
The next motion you're gonna get is gonna rescind the motion here, because it doesn't say to amend. That's what he's saying.
But the first one, did we ever say that on August 26th, did we talk about a hazardous waste day?
I don't remember that. I don't remember
So
either.
that one, I don't think should have been amended because we never
Yeah,
actually.
we voted on it last
The hazardous waste day?
time. We changed some wording to, if you recall, we added raise and appropriate.
So we added raise and appropriate now. That's why we're
To
amending it.
that one, yes, that's why we had.
Yeah, because it just said transfer from funds, and I said to you, that should be raise and appropriate.
Kevin, this
And off.
motion should have been made, to amend our motion of August 26th with that dollar amount. So, is there, that's
Wait a
understandable.
minute, wait.
So we're gonna need to resend it and revote. I make a motion to resend. Second, anyway? I'll step down, second it. All in favor to rescind the previous motion?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Now, is there a motion to amend the vote of August 26th to see if the town, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and or transfer from available funds the amount of $14,934 to the defense to be determined, the final amount to be determined by future discussion with the Board of Health and Board of Selectmen to additionally fund account 0100-51000505106, personnel expenses, salary health agent due to an increase in wages and work hours. I'll step down and second the motion, all in favor? Aye. I'll step down. Good?
No.
No, okay. All right, last one is, if we recall our last conversation, maybe, was the last meeting when Stacy was here?
It would have been the 12th when I was not.
Okay. So, we're having a problem with people who have residential kennels not applying for a kennel license because of the requirement of a special permit. So after discussion with, too many marks and lights and stuff. discussion with Mark Pacheco, town clerk, and Mike Mullen, the town administrator, and Stacy Ferry, we wrote an article that eliminates the requirement for a special permit. However, we added wording that forces some type of procedure to be followed, and that the Board of Health promulgate regulations governing and processing for approving residential kennel. So what this does, I'll wait for that.
What's on the chocolate? Is this one?
Oh, this is the old.
That was Steve, no, that was stuff I just got. We threw away all that other stuff.
Oh,
One?
So Todd, you have the minutes
No.
right there. Can
Any
you
beers
put
in
on
there?
the- Yeah, August 26th, yeah. I don't remember a vote on kennel bylaws.
We never voted on it, yes, we got live.
I'm sorry,
There's some saying anything crazy.
no, I'm saying, I need one.
So you're entitled, it's water, water.
I know.
Oh, by the way, I went over my hours.
hey, if it was something I needed, I don't wanna hear about it.
At a time, it's only August 27th.
Oh, right, because this is us.
Thank goodness for that.
The 12 years won't need, you won't see it.
Almost done.
I don't think they did it.
I was talking about the new residential kennel application. Process. And then I sat down with town administrator, Stacy Perry, and town clerk to draft. We removed the requirement for a special permit due to the cost to the residents, and they weren't getting kennel licenses. So we divided, if you read, this is where we come in. I'm not gonna read it all for the entire, it said, note this section does not apply to properties with 3 dogs or less. Okay, said residential kennels approved by the Board of Health and Animal Control Officer shall be inspected annually. The Board of Health shall promulgate regulations governing said process for approving and inspecting a residential kennel as so defined in accordance with applicable Massachusetts general laws. The purpose of drafting it this way was to get it out of the hands of the zoning board and have them come here because there is the hearing would be unnecessary with a high dollar amount. They could come here for free. The only thing, and this is in the regulations, I suppose we could charge them a minimum amount, but notification to abutters, again, it'll be in regulations, and we'll discuss that today. So it doesn't seem like a whole lot of work for us, but I don't know how you feel about it. I know she reports to the police department now. We're trying to save the residents some money and have them come to us, which is where it probably should have came in the first place.
Yeah, but that's the tough part, because she works under the police department as animal control,
Right.
and then the body proving it is the Board of Health. At least for her, it's, for the zoning, it's more of a zoning thing, where you're gonna place this thing. It's not a public health thing, it's more of a nuisance control.
Well, we're trying to get people to, I understand where you come from, because I said we had a procedure at the beginning. We're trying to get people to do what they're supposed to do and get a kennel license. We still have the nuisance complaint,
But that's to the police department.
Police department knows nothing about kennels and
No,
dogs.
but she does her complaint, she's under their authority.
I think we need a board that can oversee the public hearing, if you will, and know what everybody is talking about.
Who's issuing regular kennel licenses?
Mark Pacheco. He's still gonna issue a license. We're just gonna make a recommendation.
I'm not sure. Should ask. I thought it's supposed to be. I don't know,
I don't know either.
I'm not sure. Well, I don't wanna step in it, that's why. We're not supposed to be doing, there's something written.
Mr. Chairman, when, 3 years ago, during the negotiation of the police chief's contract, there was reference to his oversight of that position and also harbor master. I did some calling around to find out who does this, who's in charge? And what I found was it was a local option. It's like 50-50 Board of Health and 50-50 Police Department. And even harbor master, which we are talking about, except that some communities, it was a whole separate department by itself. If anything, it would have been reporting to the Board of Selectmen in that town. And in other towns, it was under the police department, considered law enforcement. So it's really, my understanding is, it's really up to the town. I believe right now, it's still in the police chief's contract, that he has oversight. But he doesn't even put the budget together. It comes out of your department. And this is another one of those things that really should be worked out. Who's in charge? It certainly makes sense. If hearing has to be held, police department doesn't hold hearings.
No.
So, just something to think about.
Right now, it is the zoning board. You charge what, $1,000?
1,500.
1,500?
Just if you want to have 4 dogs on your property.
Am I gonna pay that to have the hearing?
Yes.
Wow.
And that doesn't even guarantee I'm gonna get the approval and get the license.
No money back now.
I'll tell you, I'm in favor of this. I think we should have some kind of,
Did that include the advertising fee too, is that about?
input,
It's above that.
to what's going on with kennels out there, just so we avoid future nuisance complaints and barking dogs.
Can this wait till spring, so we have time to talk to the police chief, talk to.
Yeah, the only thing I think that would have to happen is the zoning board probably has a procedure in place. So if they adopted this and then it became effective right away, then they'd say, oh, I didn't know about notifying the abutters, or I didn't know
Well,
about.
this is where creating our regulation for the process comes in.
Is there a zoning bylaw that says they have
We're
to
working on
do
3,
this?
4 regulations at the same time. Where we're
We're
gonna,
not asking for special permit anymore. So
Is
it's
there
out
a
of the
zoning,
hand of
is
the
there
zoning
a
board.
zoning bylaw that says the zoning board hears these things and has control over a special permit? Because if that's the case, you've got a couple of things going on.
No, it is not gonna be any special permit.
No, but it's
that's
just
not what I'm
something already in
saying.
existence.
is this something that says in our
Not
bylaw?
that I know.
We should double
The other thing is, if you put it on the warrant now, that warrant's gonna be reviewed by David Gay. And if he sees it, as, no, you can't do that, it's coming off,
Right.
which means you've got the time to go ahead. And if it goes on the warrant and the people vote it, it's gonna be looked at by the AG. And if the AG says, you can't do this, folks, then you're gonna have to do it over again anyhow. But if you don't at least put it on,
Yeah, we can send it over.
You can always have a motion to pass it on the floor and say,
if David
Well,
Gay says, no, it's coming off, it won't.
There's a lot of work to be done with this yet, because it has to pass through us. If I know if we wanna change anyway, it has to pass through planning board. And then, after all the changes, it gets on the warrant. This is not the final. It's going to be just moving forward through the process.
yes, Kevin, if this does happen, we will need an application, we will need to have regulations or whatever.
We're not prepared for that either.
Depends on when you make it effective.
So there's a limbo time, and nobody has to go for a permit anyway. So if we say June 1st, from that time, it's,
Nothing is really gonna change as far as procedure and who's issuing permits and who's doing inspections.
It's just a matter of there's a hearing regarding that.
yeah, never mind.
This change, $1,500. You guys aren't gonna
Well,
charge
that's
that.
why it's,
No, that's,
Yeah, I mean, because it's zoning board, it has to be put in the paper, and that's like
I just want them to
$500.
take the other fees of notifying everyone, put in the paper and all that. That's fine with me.
so, do we wanna move this along as is?
Want to add a date in there?
We're probably gonna, we can. I think we should make a motion forward to that and then put this for more discussion next meeting.
We have time though for tomorrow?
Yeah, as long as this becomes a placeholder.
Okay.
Next week as well. I'll make the motion to move forward with this, with the addition that a date of July 1st be 2022 be put in for an effective date.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So July 1st, because now you have a town meeting, then there's a 30-day window to get it to the AG's office, and the AG's office is 90
It's gonna
days.
take
to
that
get
time
it.
anyway.
And so, make it the fiscal year.
We can also do our homework from now until then.
Right.
To see if there's a conflict with zoning.
Well, the good thing is you're gonna have a legal review. And David Gay will see the whole warrant,
It gets pulled if there's a problem.
all right? And if he sees anything wrong with it, he's just gonna tell Mike, take that off, they can't do that. Because, and then he'll tell you why you can't do it, or how you should do it, or whatever.
I think if it was, I would have thought that town administrator or the town clerk would have, well, although I think I knew more than they did, but I don't know. Mike knows what's going on with this stuff too, but that's the best bet, town council will be using.
He's gonna get paid to review the warrant. So if he says it's okay, it goes.
Yeah.
And it will get reviewed again when it gets to the AG. So it's not like you're paying for any extra money to have this one article reviewed. And if he says no, you're gonna get the guidance on what you have to do.
Yeah.
What do we do now? We can't put it on.
Does, anybody have any energy left to make the motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Ah, Jimmy.
Motion made and seconded, adjourn, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Good night, those of you who are watching us, will be watching us on the future broadcast of Zoom.
Not at 11 o'clock.
Have a good evening.
Oh, we're in here.
You just left the alarm.